Well, it's time to talk about off-grid housing. And it all comes down to what kind of lifestyle you're going to do, how simplified you have made your life and how simple you want your life, and what kind of weather you have to deal with. So we'll discuss all of that. In simplifying it, I've broken it down to the essence of a shelter and what it actually is and functions as. The main thing that it does is it protects you from the elements. So that's why I ask what kind of weather you have to deal with. I live in a place that has mild winters, warm summers, and a lot of wind. That's why I have decided my preference would be a pit shelter, because the wind is just so obnoxious. Anyway, the point is, what kind of weather do you have? That's just some examples. On the west side of Washington, they deal with mild temperatures all year, but lots of rain and clouds and trees. So you don't want to buy an RV over there, for instance. They almost always have leak issues and mold. So that's not an ideal setup for the west side, for instance. Phoenix area, obviously that would be different. They have one of the highest annual temperatures in Phoenix, and so that's a lot of arid sun heat. So there, for instance, you would want insulation to protect you from the heat, not to keep heat in. Or if you don't use power, then a shelter there, you could get away with a nice big roof and open air so the breeze can get through. I've dealt with that kind of weather here in the summertime, and it's amazing what shade and a breeze will do for you. It actually makes it tolerable. Granted, it's not usually 120 here like it gets in Phoenix, but that's just some examples. So for you, contemplate where you're going to live, what kind of weather you're going to deal with, and what pros and cons you want to deal with. So that's the essence of a shelter. It's to protect you from the weather primarily. Now inside, if you've watched my other videos, I spent time learning my patterns and habits, and I've come up with this list from that. And I think it's pretty consistent for most people. Inside of a house, you need a bed, you need a sitting area. That's where I sit and drink coffee, where I read a book, and I actually eat in the same chair. I don't use a table. Even when I had a house in town, I found that I always just sat down with my food. It's just so simple. So you need a sitting area. If you get something solid to write on, you can also do whatever writing you do, but these days most of it's on a laptop anyway. That's why I found I was just mostly sitting in my comfortable chair near the wood stove, and it was simple and easy. But you might want a desk. That's a good place to store some things, a few drawers and a good surface for writing. And then if you did need to eat at a table, you can utilize a desk or just use a table for both purposes, but that doesn't have drawers. So so far inside we've got sleeping area, sitting area, writing area, desk, writing / eating. Heat. You need a source of heat. Now, I didn't differentiate between cooking because I use my heat surfaces for cooking primarily. But then you'll need to decide, do you want to stay attached to town by using propane heat, which is pretty simple. You can get a Wave 5 heater and that'll heat a pretty good little area. And it's inexpensive, probably cheaper than, well, definitely cheaper than buying firewood in many places. Or if you want firewood, it's easy to get free firewood if you really apply yourself. Free It only costs time and energy, which is a good workout. Wood heat. I suppose there's oil heat. And if you wanted to start developing your own fuels like alcohol or oil, then you could create your own heat. But I think propane and wood are the primary ones that are the easiest to get into. So you need a bed, a sitting area, desk, eating area, heat area, and a cooking area. I prefer to call it a cooking area to get away from all the ideas that we have of what a kitchen is supposed to be. My cooking area consists of food storage, food preparation surface, pot and pan storage, and mixing bowl storage. And then most people will want some kind of a water dispenser, dishwashing area. I don't have that. I don't wash my dishes, but a lot of people can't live that way. I do keep water inside in a 7-gallon container. So a cooking area, it's made up of food storage, pots, pans, dishes, storage, food preparation area, and cooking surface, which for me is my heating area, and water. So that's all that it takes to make up a cooking area. It's way different than the requirements of a kitchen. When I was a realtor, it is so true that kitchens sell houses. So if you need a big kitchen, this life might not be for you. There's a lot of people with kitchens bigger than my whole house that I live in. But it's just not necessary. And what I forgot to mention earlier, a major tip in living in a small confined area is storing as much stuff outside of the area as you can. So stuff that isn't damaged by heat or extreme cold and can handle those fluctuating temperatures. Even if you're in a van life situation, you can store as much as you can in a trailer or on the roof, and only bring inside what you use on a daily basis or a bi-daily basis. So that's a major tip, and it's the same with your cooking area. I've got everything in my cooking area to last probably a week at least before I need to replenish anything, and that's primarily water that needs to be done every week. And then next would probably be flour. Well, and then meat, of course, because my meat walks around outside. So after a sleeping area, sitting area, desk/eating area, heating area, cooking area, then it would be a toilet area, which this again comes down to personal preferences. It really can consist of a 3-foot by 2-foot enclosure that could even be covered just with drapes. Since I live alone, I just pull my toilet out when I need it, use it, and put it away, and then go wash my hands. So it can be pretty simple. If you live alone and you use my system, which is a bucket and a toilet seat lid and dirt, and there's no smell, that takes up just a little bigger than a 5-gallon bucket area, and it can just be stashed away and pulled out when needed. For us guys, hey bird, hey crow. Try to be friendly with the crows. So for traveling, that's an excellent system. I did it when I went to Texas for 5 weeks and the next year for 2 months. It's cheap, it's easy, it takes very little space. And if you're a guy, for number one, you just go outside. It's pretty simple. Or if you're traveling, use something else. But, and you don't, like if you're in town. For the ladies, I can't really speak to it, but there's an idea. It is legal to throw that bucket at a county dump at the transfer station. That's legal. Look it up in your area. So that's one way of disposing it if you're traveling. If you've got your own property, you can designate an area to turn it into compost, and that just takes a couple years. And again, you trust me on this, there's no smell. I once accidentally dropped a full bucket and it splashed around, couldn't smell a thing. It's just surprising. And I know on Facebook, when I try to tell everybody about how simple toilet is, and people just, sometimes people just laugh and say, yeah, if you can stand the smell, blah, blah, blah. But that's just people who talk from what they think is right versus what they learn from experience. I've learned from experience. And I've tried multiple things. I tried kitty litter, I tried ash, and I tried ash and water. That was my main one for a while until I figured out that dirt works. Dirt is way easier to come by than ash. Kitty litter sucked. That was horrible. When I was traveling, I was going to the dollar store and buying bags for $1. Like you could get 14, and then I was throwing them out at the gas station. That wasn't ideal, but it's functional and it's cheap. So after toilet area is bathing. So that's a tougher one. And honestly, I go in town and visit my parents on a fairly regular basis, like once a week. So I just shower there. Eventually I'll set up my own system. Also, by the way, you don't have to shower every day. Your body is not designed to do that. And if you stop showering now, you'll probably tell me, oh, I have issues. Well, give it a little time and let your body adjust to not having all its oils taken off of it on a daily or twice daily basis. But that's beside the point. You bathe however much you feel you need to. I'm just saying it's not necessary. And so there again, when I have bathed out here, I can actually shower with 3 gallons of water. And it's not that I was wanting more. I was totally done and didn't need to go any further. So what I was doing was I boiled a gallon of water and added that to 2 gallons, made it a perfect temperature. I have my bucket that I hang up, and just sprayed myself down, soaped off, and rinsed. And I think I set up a tarp. I hung up a tarp, and I had a plastic sled that I collected the water in. So that's one way. When I lived in South Africa for a year, I got to see how they did it, and they would also boil water and mix it with normal water, and then they had a plastic dish about that big that they'd put soapy water in, and then you just stand in it. No, they wouldn't put soapy water in. They just put the water in and then soap off standing in that, and then rinse off, and then just take that water pan and dump it out. That was a really simple way also. And where I was, the Zulu people, they bathe twice a day with that system. That one's probably the easiest because it takes absolutely no running water. It just takes boiling it up in a pot and putting it in a pan. So it can be done really simple. On the other hand, if you're really wanting to, you can also put a bucket up high and run a hose down. There's really good propane water heaters. I've used those and they function really well once you get them working. So you can do that too, and it doesn't take a huge area. You can set up plastic into a pan, shower, and then throw the pan out and take the plastic down. So it doesn't have to be a permanent place. It can be done right in your living area. That's kind of the point there. Or you can designate an area for it. So that's bathing, and after that, lighting. So as many of you know, I'm simplifying as much as I can, working more and more towards 1800s type of a lifestyle, or even Stone Age in some ways, or Bronze Age in some ways, but most of all trying to get away from connection to society. And so I've had 2 solar panels before, but my horses broke them, and I'm down to 1. I've had 3 panels, they broke 2, and I'm down to 1, but I only had 2 set up at a time. And I've been getting by with 1 light bulb. So it's a 40-watt equivalent LED, of course, just by LED. And you'd be amazed how much light that throws out. But another trick is when you're living this lifestyle where you're closer to nature, you get everything done outside before it gets dark, and then you don't need light. And then when you go inside, I like it lit up, but I'm also working toward going toward candles with animal fat. You can get tons of animal fat for free from butchers, or when you're butchering your own animals. And I finally figured out how to make candles from it, and I experimented with one that threw pretty good light. So I'm making 2 more candles, so I'll have 3, and I'm going to see if that's enough to read by at night, because I really want to switch to candles. And then I would only need power for charging my phone and my laptop. That would be my only power needs, outside of if I can get rid of lighting. But even with lighting, my point is 1 light bulb is all I need. If you have another area, you can set up another light bulb and just turn them on 1 at a time, or just get more battery bank and run more lights if you must. My point is, it's just 1 throws out pretty good light. It lights up my eating area and where I sit and read. So that's all the areas that I believe are required. Outside would be storage area, and then pantry area. I really need that where I have some consistent heat, where in the wintertime I can store stuff that won't be frozen, and in the summertime where I can keep stuff cool. So a pantry, because I'm stationary, is another thing I want. Now, if people had family, I don't have a family, so I'm not really confident about this, but I've imagined it in case I meet a woman and we have kids. In my opinion, the only thing that needs to be added to this is another sleeping area, which can be done by elevating a bed. I've always had elevated beds most of the time for space utilization. And then you put kids' beds underneath. That could work for many years. And a play area is another one if you have kids. So that could be an additional room. And that's really only needed during the winter time, because the rest of the time, make your kids go outside and play. Build their own fort outside, as we did when we were kids. So it seems to me just a play area, and maybe a little more area for sitting, depends on how cramped your space is, so that they can work on their own stuff or play on their phones in their own sitting area, and sleeping areas. So I don't think for a family it should be very much more difficult, and you can see that on other homestead videos of people with families. So that's the majority of my thoughts on what it takes for housing. Okay, I forgot, when I lived in a shed, so our winters, they get down into the 20s at night and 30s and 40s in the daytime most of the winter. But then we get our cold spells that get down into the teens or the single digits. That's all Fahrenheit. At night, we have, sometimes it'll get cold enough that it stays in the low teens during the day, but that's pretty rare. I've stayed in a non-insulated cabin 4 winters. This is the first year I've ever had an insulated place. And I wanted to do that because, if you've noticed, I like to try things and buck the system, learn from experience rather than what I'm told. And I found most of the winter I had the doors open and I'd sit in my chair looking at the fireplace and looking at my view, and it was beautiful. And it was warm enough that I didn't need insulation. Now, why wouldn't I want insulation? For one, the cost. 2, the chemicals. 3, as soon as you board up walls, that gives mice places to dig in and live, and then you're dealing with mice. I like simplicity. I don't like having to deal with things. I want to be able to build a house and be done with it. So that's just from my experience. I think I did use more firewood, obviously, but it was I think it's called a gabled roof. So I had tons of heat that was way up high, which was nice while I was sleeping because I was sleeping 7 feet high. But the rest of the time it was just a waste. Currently I have a ceiling that's only 7 feet high. That's it. And stays a lot warmer. So things like that just aren't necessary. A pit house is my favorite because once you get down in almost anywhere in the world, I believe, once you get 3 or 4 feet down into the ground, the thermal temperatures are around here, they're said to be 57 degrees. And it's way easier to heat from 57 degrees up to 75 degrees than it is from 20 degrees up to 75 degrees. I don't see why we're not all living underground and saving all the energy. So that's my desire. And you can go inside and then you don't have any clue the wind is even blowing. But we'll see if I ever get to that point. Pretty soon I'm going to be living in my teepee. I've only stayed in it before. I've never lived in it long term. So I'm looking forward to that. So I hope this is helpful. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments. If I was unclear on anything, just ask. I'm happy to clarify. And if you're curious about your own situation, I'm happy to give my input and help you wrestle through it and figure it out for yourself. So you can, I'm not on Facebook and Instagram as much anymore. I currently don't have phone service. So, but you can still follow me there. You can send me private messages if you prefer that to the comments. And also, I appreciate if you share these videos. That's it. I think I'll go butcher a chicken.